What if I told you that everything you have been searching for, everything you have been reaching toward, every longing you have carried in the center of your chest is not somewhere out there in the distance, not in the next achievement or relationship or spiritual teacher or sacred place, but here, now, already present within the quiet chambers of your own being? What if the God you have been seeking, the truth you have been chasing, the peace you have been promised, is not located outside of you at all, but has always been resting in the depths of your own interior life, waiting patiently for you to turn inward and recognize it? Maybe you are not lost because you have not found the right path outside yourself. Maybe you are lost because you have been taught to look everywhere but within. Maybe the exhaustion you feel is not from failing to reach something external, but from the endless effort of denying what is already here, already alive, already breathing quietly beneath the noise of your daily existence. There are people who spend their entire lives moving from one external promise to another. They visit temples and churches and retreats. They read books and follow teachers and collect practices. They believe that if they can just find the right system, the right guide, the right sacred geography, they will finally arrive at what they're looking for. And there is nothing wrong with seeking. There is nothing wrong with exploration. But there comes a moment, sometimes quiet and sometimes shattering, when you realize that every path you have walked has been leading you back to the same place. Back to yourself. Back to the one who has been seeking all along. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He spent much of his life exploring the inner world, not as an escape from reality, but as the most profound reality available to us. He spoke of the unconscious not as a dark basement filled with things to be feared, but as a vast inner landscape filled with symbols, memories, potentials, and yes, even divinity. Jung believed that the process of individuation, of becoming who you truly are, requires you to turn inward, to face what lives inside you, to integrate the parts of yourself you have rejected or ignored. He understood that the divine is not something separate from the psyche, but something that speaks through it, moves through it, reveals itself in dreams and images and the quiet stirrings of your own soul. When Jung spoke of God, he was not speaking of a distant figure sitting on a throne in the sky, judging and commanding. He was speaking of something immediate, something psychological and spiritual at once, something that can only be encountered in the depths of your own experience. He once said that he did not believe in God. He knew God. And what he meant was that the divine was not a matter of abstract belief, but of direct inner experience. This is not blasphemy. This is not arrogance. This is the recognition that the sacred is not absent from the world, but woven into the very fabric of your own consciousness. You may have been taught that to seek God, you must deny yourself, that you must become smaller, quieter, less, that your desires and thoughts and feelings are obstacles to the divine, that you must transcend your humanity in order to reach something higher. And perhaps there is some truth in the need to move beyond the ego's endless demands, beyond the surface chatter of the mind. But what if the path is not about transcending yourself, but about descending into yourself? What if the divine is not found by escaping your humanity? universal, something eternal, something that can only be called divine. You do not need to go anywhere to find this. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to achieve some special state of consciousness or purity or enlightenment. You only need to stop running. You only need to turn around and face what is already here. You only need to be still long enough to notice what has always been present, quietly waiting, patiently holding you, even in your most desperate moments of seeking. This is not a comfortable teaching in a culture that worships action and achievement. It is not a popular teaching in a spiritual marketplace that sells you methods and systems and promises of transformation. It is not an easy teaching for the ego, which wants to be the hero of its own story, which wants to earn its salvation, which wants to prove its worth through effort and accomplishment. But the truth is that you cannot earn what you already have. You cannot achieve what you already are. You cannot find outside yourself what lives inside you. And the moment you stop trying, the moment you stop grasping, the moment you allow yourself to simply be, you discover that the divine is not absent. It has never been absent. It has been here all along, closer to you than your own breath, more intimate than your own thoughts, woven into the very fabric of your existence. This does not mean that the outer world does not matter. It does not mean that relationships and work and creativity and service are unimportant. It means that they are secondary. It means that they flow from the inside out, not the outside in. It means that when you are grounded in your own inner presence, when you are connected to the source within, everything you do in the outer world becomes an expression of that connection, rather than a desperate attempt to fill an inner void. There is a difference between seeking and grasping. Seeking is natural. It is the movement of consciousness toward greater understanding, greater wholeness, greater truth. Grasping is fear-based. It is the ego's attempt to secure itself, to find permanence, to avoid the vulnerability of simply being. When you seek from a place of inner connection, the seeking itself becomes a form of devotion, a form of love, a form of participation in the mystery. When you grasp from a place of inner emptiness, the seeking becomes exhausting, endless, a treadmill that never delivers what it promises. You may have noticed this in your own life. The times when you felt most alive, most present, most connected, were not the times when you finally achieved something external. They were the times when you were simply here, fully here, open and aware and receptive. Maybe it was a moment in nature when the beauty of the world cracked open your heart. Maybe it was a moment of deep conversation when you felt truly seen and heard. Maybe it was a moment of solitude when you stopped trying and allowed yourself to just be, and in that stillness, something shifted, something softened, something opened. These moments are not accidents. They are not random gifts from a distant God. They are glimpses of your true nature. most sacred way. When you find this love within yourself, your relationships change. You no longer need others to complete you. You no longer cling or demand or manipulate. You meet others from a place of wholeness, from a place of presence, from a place of genuine openness. You can love without losing yourself. You can connect without abandoning your own center. You can be intimate without merging, separate without isolating. This is the paradox. The more deeply you go into yourself, the more connected you become to others. The more you honor your own solitude, the more authentic your relationships become. The more you find God within, the more you see God in everything, in everyone, in all of life. Because once you recognize the divine in yourself, you cannot help but recognize it everywhere. You see it in the eyes of a stranger. You feel it in the wind and the rain. You sense it in the silence between words, in the space between thoughts, in the stillness at the center of the storm. You realize that the whole world is sacred, that every moment is holy, that there is nowhere God is not, because God is not a being among beings, but the being of all beings, the presence that animates everything, the consciousness that looks out through every pair of eyes, including your own. This is not pantheism in the sense of worshiping nature as separate from yourself. This is the recognition that there is no separation, that the divine is not in things, but is the very isness of things, that you are not a separate self encountering a separate God, but a unique expression of the one reality, the one consciousness, the one love that is playing all the parts, living all the lives, experiencing itself through infinite forms. And when you see this, really see it, not just as an idea, but as a lived reality, everything changes. The search ends, not because you have found something, but because you realize there was never anything to find. Not because you have arrived somewhere, but because you realize you were never lost. Not because you have become enlightened, but because you realize that the light was always here, always shining, always present, even in the darkest moments, even in the deepest confusion, even in the most profound despair. This does not mean that suffering ends. It does not mean that life becomes easy or painless or free of challenge. It means that suffering is no longer meaningless. It means that pain is no longer proof of abandonment. It means that struggle is no longer evidence that you have done something wrong, that you are being punished, that God has turned away from you. You begin to see that everything, even the difficult things, even the painful things, even the things you would never choose, are part of the process, part of the unfolding, part of the way consciousness comes to know itself more deeply. You begin to see that your wounds are not just wounds, but openings, that your darkness is not just darkness, but the place where the light enters, that your brokenness is not just brokenness, but the crack where the divine shines through. Leonard Cohen